Hi again then guys, and welcome to another instalment of the Beards and Cars podcast, and if I sound a little bit off today, it's because of the hay fever season starting to come into effect. Don't worry, I haven't got anything else at the moment, and as far as this particular countdown, it's basically a follow-on to last week, which was our top 5 favourite Gran Turismo games. Now, of course, the natural next best thing is our top 5 Forza games. Now, I know that many of you on the channel have not played Forza, but for those of you who have, you can probably easily make a top 5, but here's the interesting thing, because there are more Forza games than Gran Turismo games, you can actually make a top 10 pretty easily. You can almost even make a top 15, because you've got the mobile, the PC stuff, all that kind of thing. But as far as what I'm doing, I've ordered it into a top 5, which is my actual 5 favourites, and then, just like the Gran Turismo list, I've got some honourable mentions. Now, interestingly, both of those put together does make 10 games, but I'm not considering the first 5 honourable mentions, which I'll rattle through pretty quickly, to be favourites by any stretch. They're games which I have either a very low amount of interest in to a decent amount, but none of them are my absolute favourites. And it might actually surprise some fans that technically the 11th game on my list, so not even on the list, is Forza Motorsport 5, for, funnily enough, the same reason as Gran Turismo 1, and that is that I don't dislike the game, I simply haven't spent enough time on it to have an opinion. I don't know if I like the game or not. I own it, and I've booted it up, but that's about it. In fact, I've played it the least out of all of the Forza games that I have. I've never played Apex, I've never played Forza Street, so there are a couple that I haven't played at all, but of the ones that I do own, Forza Motorsport 5 is my least used. Now, the first of my honourable mentions, the lowest on the list, if you will, is actually Forza Horizon 2. And I'm not going to fully get into any of these honourable mentions, but I basically just don't get the same kind of vibe from that game as the other ones. I find it a little bit formulaic. The first game was genuinely brilliant in terms of what it was going for. The third one and fourth one are among my favourites. The second one just never did it for me. There's not really that much that feels unique about Forza Horizon 2. It's very forgettable for me. The next one on the list is actually, perhaps surprisingly to some people, and I believe this one will be higher for many people, Forza Motorsport 6. Because again, I didn't play it a huge amount. I actually found the career mode on both Forza 6 and Forza 7 to be kind of ho-hum. The games themselves feel a bit mediocre to me, to be honest. I like many things about them, but they don't really feel to me like they bring that much new to the table since Forza 4. So we'll have to see, of course, where they come later on the list, but for now, Motorsport 6 is way down in 9th, and I don't need to talk about the next one that much because I basically just did, Forza Motorsport 7, so I know that many people will put both of these a hell of a lot higher on the list, but for me, it's got to be pretty low. I simply don't have the same connection, the same love, and they don't have the same replayability for me as any of the others on the list do. Now, the next one for me, I know many people will disagree with in a very ironically similar way to Gran Turismo. Because, as I said last week, I actually played through the Forza games in a similar way to Gran Turismo. I played the second one first, then the third, then the fourth, then kind of moved back to Gran Turismo, whereas with Gran Turismo after 4 I moved over to Forza, and it is strangely and in an unplanned way ironic how my timelines of playing both series and both franchises is so similar. But for me, it's Forza Motorsport 3. I know that many people absolutely love this game in a similar way to Gran Turismo 3, but I just don't feel that way. To me, Forza Motorsport 3, despite being a game that I played through the entirety of its lifespan, I went from Forza Motorsport 2, I bought Forza 3 the day it came out, I played it up until Forza 4 came out, and I played it all the time. But if I recall correctly, I believe that time in my gaming life was when I was spending many more hours in Test Drive Unlimited than I was in Forza 3. I enjoyed Forza 3 at the time, but to me, as soon as Forza 4 came out, I realised why I didn't like Forza 3 as much. Forza 4 is what 3 should have been, in my opinion. It feels so similar, but it's bigger and better in every way. And the final of my honourable mentions, and certainly the most honourable for me, Forza 1. the original Forza game. I go back to this game now to review cars from it, and there are some surprisingly unique cars like the Mercedes CLK GTR race car and the CLK DTM, but apart from that, it's similar to Forza 5, where I haven't spent a huge amount of time in it. In fact, I haven't spent any amount of time in career mode. I just love the game because of what it is, because it is that original, it has that classic charm, it still holds up really well. Of course, the graphics are a little dated now, but still for its time it was very good. Around Gran Turismo 4 time, the physics are great, and they definitely hold up better than Gran Turismo 4 does. And yeah, I just have a lot of love for it because of it being that original. But now, of course, we can get into the meat of the list, my actual top 5 favourite Forza games. And I'm sure that some of you will have similar ones in your top 5, but for many of you, especially younger and more recent players, you'd probably have some that I've already mentioned a lot higher on your list. In particular, I would see Forza 3, maybe Forza 7, and maybe even Horizon 2 being a lot higher for many people. But for me, in 5th place, it's actually Horizon 1, the original Forza Horizon game. Now, I had a very interesting history with this game. It came out right after Forza Motorsport 4. In fact, I believe Forza 4 was still in full effect with DLC and servers and all that kind of stuff, and Gran Turismo could certainly take a note out of that book. But I remember that I did not like Horizon when it first came out. Of course, I bought it because I was a total Forza fanboy at the time. I wasn't playing Gran Turismo at all anymore. So I went to Horizon 1, bought it day one, and then I completed the entire career mode in 2 days. And I thought, what on earth is this? How can you go from Forza 4, which is this massive game, a great rival to Gran Turismo 4, in fact, to this? Something which feels almost like Need for Speed, but with less gaudy tuning and camera blur. But over time, my feelings completely changed, and my feelings changed because of one key thing: the online experience. Racing against real people, using my headset to chat to people, to make stupid noises and beatboxing and, impressions and all that kind of stuff. It was so much fun in a community sense, and that was something which I did not have in Forza Motorsport 4. To me, in Forza 4, I was just racing and buying cars and tuning cars and collecting cars, but in Horizon 1, it felt different. It felt more about the community, and I think that's something which they've carried on very well, not so much in the second game, as I said, but certainly the third and fourth. And yeah, I actually really like Horizon 1, and it has a very special place for me now. In my number 4 spot, though, interestingly, we have game number 4. But which one? Well, we're sticking to Horizon because for me, my 4th favourite Forza game is the most recent one, Forza Horizon 4. I still play this game, I do a ton of tuning for it, I love the fact that it's in my homeland of England, and it's got one of the strongest car lineups of any Forza game, even including the motorsport games. There are so many wacky cars, classic cars, vintage cars. It's exactly the kind of car lineup that appeals to someone like me who appreciates the more oddball, the more obscure, the unsung heroes, if you will, as far as racing games go, and I love that. However, it doesn't necessarily have the depth of some of the other games, especially when you compare it to a motorsport title. That I'm not as much of a fan of, but the fact that they are keeping the community so centered, they're providing so much new stuff all the time, well, of course, that has to be lauded, and again, it's something which Polyphony could learn infinite amounts of beneficial knowledge from. But yeah, Horizon 4 for me is a personal favourite for sure. I think, again, many people would probably have it higher, but for me, it's number 4. Moving into number 3, though, and this might surprise some people, is another Horizon game. The final one that I haven't talked about yet. Horizon 3. Horizon 3 was the game that got me back into Horizon. As I said, the second one certainly didn't. The first one had a certain charm to it, but I didn't go back and play it again, certainly not on the Xbox One. But Horizon 3, what a game. the best map, as far as I'm concerned, in any of the 4 Horizon games so far, and I would most definitely, and without any shame, pick the Australian map over the England one in terms of how fun it was. Yeah, I put a lot of time into this game, I really enjoyed it, I did car reviews for it, tune setups for it, and if I recall correctly, it was Horizon 3 which kind of got me back into doing a lot of Forza content, especially when it comes to tuning. And of course I've carried that over into Horizon 4 as well, with hundreds and hundreds of primarily speed tunes, which thousands of members of the community really enjoy. In Horizon 4 alone, I think I've got something like 320 tunes on the storefront, loads on YouTube as well, and I recently passed like 60,000 tune downloads. And one of my favourite things about Horizon 3 and 4 in particular, and this is something which I believe they've really perfected in the Horizon games, is that, and I believe I've even mentioned this in a video before, it allows you to play the game not just as a racer, but as a businessman. If you, like I do, create tunes and liveries and decals, you can earn money from the community enjoying your content, and you can in effect run things earning millions of credits when you're not even on the game. I adore that kind of thing, and that certainly works for me because I don't have a huge amount of time to be playing all the time because I play so many different games on the channel. But it's cool to know that when I boot up the game the next time, I'll have a couple more million, at least, to play with. Now, though, we come to the second to last on the list, my second place pick. And this one, again, in a funny mirror to Gran Turismo last week, is the one that started it for me. Forza Motorsport 2. I still absolutely love this game. And the reason why I love it is because Forza Motorsport 2 doesn't feel like any of the other Forza games, Horizon or Motorsport, and yet it feels so quintessentially Forza. In fact, many people who ask me, for instance, after playing Gran Turismo, which Forza game should I play to try and get into it and see if I enjoy it, I always say this one. Forza Motorsport 2 is such a fantastic entry point into the series. The physics and the steering are very similar to Gran Turismo 5, I think. The graphics are a little bit too colourful by today's standards, kind of like the first Horizon game was, but it still has a lot of charm. You can tell what all the cars are. Of course, for its age, it still looks great. It's on a 360, not the Xbox One. There are fantastic cars, great tracks, and a great career mode. And of course, the fact that that's where it started for me is a huge factor, just like it was with Gran Turismo 2. But the funny thing about Forza 2 is I actually can go back and play that a lot more and enjoy it a lot more than I can with Gran Turismo 2. With Gran Turismo 2, the majority of the enjoyment that I have from it is going back and just driving my favourite cars in the game. It's not actually the career mode. Whereas with Forza 2, I can actually, if I wanted to, get back into it and actually play it and enjoy it. But of course, that leaves us with the final one on the list. My favourite Forza game. Many of you will already know which one it is, many of you will have guessed which one it is, and by process of elimination, it's fairly obvious which one it has to be. And once again, just like how Forza 2 mirrored my list with Gran Turismo, this one does as well. Like I said, my feelings and the way I play the games and the franchises are eerily similar. But for me, it really is the case. My favourite Forza game that we've had so far is without question Forza Motorsport 4. To me, this is a perfect racing game. On the Xbox 360, for its time, with the vehicles involved, the career mode, the online experience, and even the birth, the true birth, I would say, of that businessman side of Forza, which has continued ever since. Which, of course, was technically a part of Motorsport 3 as well, but I never really felt that it was as much a part of the game. It felt like it was very much an early stages kind of thing. In Forza Motorsport 4, they really perfected it. This idea of an auction house and a storefront where you can buy and sell vehicles, sell your wares, really earn money from your skills. I loved that idea, and I made hundreds of millions of credits in that game. The car list was fantastic. Certainly none of the previous games matched up to that. They didn't even come close. And even all of the games since have featured a lot of those same cars again. In, again, a funnily similar way to how Gran Turismo 5 and 6 and even Sport feature a lot of cars that were already in 4. As I just said with Motorsport 2, that is one of a couple of Forza games that I recommend to anyone who's trying to get into the series, but this one is the other one that I always recommend. Motorsport 2 and Motorsport 4, both on the Xbox 360, are my favourite two Forza games. Now, if you have an Xbox One, or if you want to get one, I would definitely recommend getting Horizon 3 and 4, and maybe a Motorsport 6 or 7. For this one, though, I believe that the advantage is clear. An Xbox 360 is a lot cheaper for somebody who's trying to get into it, and for me, the later Motorsport games in particular don't match the kind of charm that these ones had. And it's not just about, the charm of bad graphics. Motorsport 4 holds up really well. The cars are fantastic, so are the circuits. In fact, there are many tracks which we've never had, for instance, in Gran Turismo, and a ton of people would love to have, like Sebring, Hockenheim, various others too. Fantastic tracks. And they're all back there in 2011 in that game. Many of them not even DLC. So yeah, my favourite game in the Forza series is undoubtedly Motorsport 4, and even though I don't necessarily play it as much as something like Horizon 4, the primary reason for that is just because of the channel. Horizon 4 is the current thing, so that's what I, play it for. Whereas, for me, Motorsport 2 and Motorsport 4, they're my favourites, and to some degree, they might always be. And last time I checked, I believe Forza, or more specifically Turn 10, announced that their next game was going to be something different. So, of course, we could speculate on what that could be. As far as I know, it hasn't been confirmed or announced yet. My hope beyond hope, is that they actually do what Polyphony did with Tourist Trophy. Imagine how cool it would be to have a Forza motorbike game. But I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen. I really, really hope that it does, but it probably won't. But that's it for my top 5, even my top 10 once you factor in the honourable mentions. So tell me down below, what are your top 5? Maybe a top 3, maybe even just your favourite one. Or you could go full on top 10, or of course, if you've played all of the Forza games, you could list every single one of them, including, Apex, Forza Street, that kind of stuff. But overall, that is it for this installment of Beards and Cars. Of course, if you're new to the channel and want to keep up with all of my latest videos, be sure to hit that notification bell. And if you're a Gran Turismo fan and you didn't watch last week's episode, I'd recommend doing so. You can see it through the playlist here on screen. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.